somebody in the class said, "Oh, it sounds like you have a sprint hangover." And I thought, that's perfect. That's exactly what it is, sprint hangover. And that is very bad. Just like a regular hangover is bad, sprint hangover is worse.
I'm going to now take that, Agile Bob. I'm going to take that, and that's actually going to be the title of today's video, this sprint hangover. And I will use that in my next class coming up. Welcome everybody to another episode of Real Agile or BS. I'm Peter Saddington with Agile Bob here from Agile for All, and we love answering your frequently asked questions in the Agile and Scrum space. Today we want to talk about one that actually happens quite a lot. It's this whole idea of carrying extra work into the next sprint. Is that real Agile or is that BS? What do you say, Agile Bob?
Well, I think on the face of it, it's definitely BS. But Agile is about building an increment and having it be done, and the whole concept of carrying work from one sprint to the next. I like to look at that as what happens in the worst case scenario. Well, we pull all the work from one sprint to the next, and then we do it again, and then we do it again, and basically we're back to waterfall. We do a big chunk of work. It's finally done after 10 sprints, and we ship it, and it just doesn't work for me. On the other hand, some teams fall into the trap of that happening to them, and they think it's a good thing. And so here's the phrase that I don't know how this makes you feel, Peter, but it makes me shudder every time I hear it. It's like, yeah, in every sprint we'll have a stretch goal. And that's the work that goes into the next sprint. And I'm like, yeah, oh, wow, such a bad idea. So talk to me about stretch goals, Peter, because I know you have a little bit of background where you've probably done some research on those things. Give me some ideas about what's good and bad about that.
The problem with stretch goals is stretch goals it's not a measurable asset to the overall sprint, right? And it's one of those things where I think, in my opinion, it adds undue pressure onto the team to try to fit that in. Or on the other side, it creates a negative behavior pattern where it's like, it's a stretch goal, we'll just get to it when we get to it. Regardless, I think it's a negative behavior pattern within the culture of the team. So I'm very anti-stretch goal. I think it's something that is not helpful. I've heard other versions of it. It's like, this is all the 10 stories that we've committed to, and these are a couple nice to haves. Like, what the hell is it nice to have? Like, you either want it or you don't want it. Give me the rationale and reasons, product owner, as to why this is something that's valuable that needs to be done. Because a nice to have tells me that you're really kind of, for lack of a better term, flaccid on, I don't know if that was the right term, but it just came to mind, but flaccid on the value of this. Do you really want it or do you not want it? Because if we don't have it, how are you going to feel? If we do have it, this kind of reminds me of Kano analysis. If we do have it, how does it make you feel? And so these are the types of questions that I would ask when it comes to any type of work that isn't completed during this sprint. I always tell our product owners and Scrum Masters and teams some very, very specific guidance on that. If it's not completed in the sprint, it gets pulled back into the product backlog for reevaluation. Do we still want to do it? Is it still valuable to do? I've seen, not often, but I've seen a couple times where a product, let's say a team finishes 7 stories out of 10 and they didn't finish 3. And I've seen it, not often, but I've seen it where all 3 of those go back into the product backlog. And the product owner is like, well, out of those 3 that we didn't finish, I only want 1 now. And so we're going to have a great retrospective at the end of this to talk about why we didn't complete this work. But I think it's really important, an important nuance to add here within this discussion, that if there's any work that's not completed in the sprint, it needs to go back in the product backlog for the product owner to reevaluate if they want to continue on. And the hope is that we have a great retrospective to talk about why there is work that wasn't finished and how we can improve our processes, our teamwork, our breaking down of user stories, which is often one of the issues that happens, or lack of clarity of acceptance criteria, the user story itself. These are often emergent things that happen. And so we'll have a great retrospective to talk about that and improve it. But this whole idea of accepting carryover work, I think it has only negatives across the board. It creates very bad behavior patterns in your culture. So for me, I'm very adamant about it. It's very anti-agile. It's BS, 100%.
Yeah, gee, I couldn't tell that you were adamant about it. But yeah, I often in my classes tell people the number one cause of agile failure is carrying work from one sprint to the next. It's on a regular basis because it's an anti-pattern. It shows you're not estimating well. You don't understand the concepts of velocity or whatever you're using to estimate. And on top of that, it should go, as you said, back into the product backlog and be reevaluated. Does the product owner want to continue spending money on that particular item? Or is it not worth that increased amount of money? Maybe it's a lower value item. If it's going to cost me twice as much to get it, maybe I don't want to do it. So those are types of things that need to happen. And I was in a class, and I got to tell you this, Peter, it was funny. I call it carrying over from one sprint to another. And somebody in the class said, "Oh, it sounds like you have a sprint hangover." And I thought, that's perfect. That's
Oh,
exactly what it is, sprint hangover. And that is very bad. Just like a regular hangover is bad, sprint hangover is worse.
I'm going to now take that, Agile Bob. I'm going to take that, and that's actually going to be the title of today's video, this sprint hangover. And I will use that in my next class coming up, so that way it can get solidified in my brain. I really like this. I can't believe I've never heard of this sprint hangover. So I
Yep.
think we can all
And
agree.
clearly a sprint hangover, complete BS. It's just not good in any way, shape, or form.
Just sounds bad for your health.
Exactly. And that's why I love the phrase.
That makes a lot of sense, guys. Well, we'll leave it to everyone out there in the community. Let us know your thoughts about this idea of having a sprint hangover and allowing carryover work from sprint to sprint, which we believe truly is an anti-pattern and just wreaks havoc in the overall culture and optimization of the work that you're doing at your company.
It
But
makes
let
my
us
head
know.
hurt to think about it.
I know. But let us know in the comments below. Obviously, subscribe, smash the like button, and share this out with your network. We'll see you guys next time.